Welcome back, Honors. We're going to go ahead and pick up kind of where we left off today in class. And before we get started, I think there's somebody very important that you should meet. And this is the love of my life. And Rufio, come here. Come here, puppy. Come here. Come here. Atta boy. It's very important that you understand like the things that I live for. Come here, baby. Oh. Hello. He's a big boy. Oh, thank you. Oh, so this is Rufio, and he's my baby. Then my wife's dog's on the other side, but she's the devil, so we won't show you her. But anyway, so we're going to start talking with all of our ancient civs. We're going to start off with Mesopotamia. Now, most of you have heard of Mesopotamia before, but you don't actually realize that Mesopotamia is actually a huge area that encompasses a lot of city-states, right? So we're going to talk about more specifically what a city-state is later. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we're going to talk more later on about what a city-state is and how it functions autonomously under this general area, and then also how they governed effectively. Okay, he's going to go lay down now. All right, so anyway, Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Now, it is the earliest civilization that we know of in history. So, there we go. Earliest civilization that we know of in history. And it's also known as the Fertile Crescent, right? Well, the Fertile Crescent is a term coined because of the fertile amount of land that lie between and on the edges of two main rivers. And it's the Tigris and the Euphrates. The reason why Mesopotamia is called that is because it actually is a Greek word meaning between the rivers. And again, those rivers are the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Now, crescent, though, actually refers to the shape that the fertile area of land takes, and that's in the shape of a crescent moon, right? Not a croissant, that's French pastry, and this is America, so it's a little bit different. Now, the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers formed a strip of fertile land, also known as the Fertile Crescent, right? So, lasted for approximately 3,000 years, so a very, very long period of time. Now, its peoples were the first to irrigate fields, and we'll talk about what that is in a moment. Devised a system of writing, developed mathematics, invented the wheel, thanks guys, and also learned to work with metal. Now, notice I said it's peoples. Why wouldn't I say it's people? It's a good job, Amy. That's right. It's because Mesopotamia is a region that actually is home to many, many, many different types of city-states and groups of people, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about who some of those people are, though. So let's keep going. Geographic conditions of the Fertile Crescent, right? This is that really meaty stuff about these ancient civilizations that we have to get into as honors courses. So first and foremost, little rainfall. Now this automatically raises a big red flag. Now we know that we're actually in the Neolithic era now, and that water is important to what process again? Good job. Farming, right? You have to be able to farm to be able to survive in the Neolithic era. Without rainfall, that means that we have to use other types of water sources. We'll get to that in a moment. It also has a very hot and dry climate. Windstorms leaving muddy river valleys during the winter, and then also catastrophic flooding of the rivers in the spring. Okay, so the soil is arid and contains very little minerals, and there is no stone or timber resources. Oh, no. I'm not ready yet. There we go. All right, talk about that. Why live in Mesopotamia if it's not going to really seem like it's going to work out for you? The reason why is this fantastic little thing that makes irrigation possible. And they are called levees, all right? Natural levees. Any music fans out there? Anybody ever heard the song American Pie? You know what I'm talking about? Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Took my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry, right? So a levee is an embankment that keeps water on the other side of it, even though the water is actually higher than the level of the soil on the other side of the embankment. So as you can see right here where it says the Euphrates River on the map, so follow me down to here. So the Euphrates River, the water level is actually higher than that of the level of the desert swamp area. So the fertile soil is made of silt and sediment that is left behind after flooding And also it makes irrigation possible by the use of gravity to dig ditches and canals down into the necessary areas where you can get it to farmlands. So, anyway, excuse me. There we go. A natural levee is the reason why the Fertile Crescent was so fertile, right? It creates a high and safe floodplain. It makes irrigation and canal construction easier. You cannot create irrigation and canal construction by digging, because remember, it all works off gravity, right? Water flows downhill. It goes against, it does not go against resistance. It goes with the flow of the land, right? So by creating this natural levee, you have a natural gravity source that's going to pull the water down from the river in a motion towards the, towards your fertile amounts of soil. Also, this little key word right there, silt, very important. It's nutrient-rich soil that revitalizes the dirt and actually keeps it coming back stronger. It's very thick, it's muddy, it's bits of rocks and mud that actually fertilize where domesticated animals weren't used to fertilize yet. So it also provides protection, all right, especially protection from windstorms. Now, the surrounding swamps were full of fresh fish and waterfowl. The reeds provided food for sheep and goats, and the reeds were also used as building resources. Do not write all of that stuff down. If some of you paused me already and wrote it anyway, it's a rookie mistake. Okay, so anyway, the main ones that are important is the fact that it makes irrigation and canal construction easy. That is the most important part. Calm down, Josie. So that's the most important part, okay? So I'm going to keep going. Now, history of Mesopotamia, right? That's aggressive. All right, so anyway, and there we go. History of Mesopotamia, right? Over the centuries, many different people lived in this big area known as Mesopotamia. Now, the biggest ones were Sumer, right, which is in the southern part from 3500 to 2000 BC. The Akkadians, which is in the northern part. We don't like to talk about them a lot because in history, they're kind of a drop in the ancient civilization bucket. And we don't really have that kind of time. You know what I mean? Like, so they only went from 2340 BC to 2180 BC. The big bad boys that everybody likes to talk about are the Babylonians, right? And the Babylonians were really important because they had a lot of major effects on the Old Testament of the Bible, okay? So some of you have heard about them before. They actually had this really weird Easter ritual that if you ask me about tomorrow, I'll tell you why Easter is the way that it is with the eggs and the whatnot. So anyway. And then also the Babylonians were split into two parts. They actually were the original Babylonians from 1830 to 1500, home to your homeboy Hammurabi, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. And then also the Neo-Babylonians when they reconquered the area of Mesopotamia. The biggest and the baddest out of all of them were the Assyrians, but we're going to wait to talk about them much later. Okay, so anyway, now, the number one most important thing to come out of Mesopotamia other than irrigation, it was, of course, of the development of writing and the development of education systems. Thank you for the job. All right, anyway, so the development of writing was extremely important because writing developed in three specific stages throughout history. It started with pictograms. Now, a pictogram is a picture to show a meaning, right? So, for example, the pictograms that you know of the best are going to be cuneiform, which is this form of writing right here, as well as hieroglyphics, right? So, for example, if I wanted to communicate to you that I think, let's see, what am I trying to say here? If I wanted to communicate to you that Tyler needs to go to the restroom, I would say, fish, snake, river guy doing this, right? So that's a pictogram. Ideograms are signs that represent words and ideas, right? So, and then phonetics are signs that are to represent sounds. Which type of writing do we use now? Good job. We use phonetics, right? Because A makes a I sound, and B makes a B sound, and C is K. There we go. So, phonetics are the basis of most writing systems today. Now, the greatest contributions of the Mesopotamians, if it's written in blue, you need to sum it up because it is important. The greatest contribution of the Mesopotamian to Western civilization was the systems of writing that they created, right? So this allowed so many important things. Without writing, we'd still probably be walking around farming and worrying about surpluses every year. However, writing allows for the transmission of knowledge. It allows for the codification of law, right? It also allows us to show records to facilitate trade and farming. The Sumerians wrote on wet clay tablets. This is actually really, really cool. I used to do an activity like this when I was at my old public school, where I'd have them draw in Play-Doh. Now, that's a little rudimentary for Catholic school, so I don't do it anymore. But they used to literally take big blobs of wet clay and smack it down onto a big piece of stone and use a stylus, right, like an actual clay stylus, to carve small images into it. Now, the very first system of writing was known as cuneiform, which you can see down here, and it looks like this. It's a series of these small little triangles. Now, the really funny thing about it is we can't read jack diddly squat of this stuff anymore. We have an idea of what some of the symbols may mean, but there's not a lot of primitive Mesopotamian, Sumerian, Babylonians, Assyrians, any of those guys running around anymore, so we don't really know what any of this stuff says, all right? So, scribes, actually, also in these societies, were the only ones who could read and write. And they also served as priests, record keepers, and accountants, okay? So, scribe was like a #1 job. It was the only job you went to school for. It was the only job that was really, really important, and you had to start as a scribe to move up the corporate ladder. Well, not corporate, but to move up the ladder in Mesopotamian society, right? And they did, like I said, learn how to write cuneiform. And this is the meaning of the word cuneiform actually means wedge shape, which is why they wrote in triangles. Cuneiform spread to Persia and Egypt and became the vehicle of growth and spread civilization and the exchange of ideas among cultures, right? We can't spread ideas to each other if we don't have important little things like writing, okay? And we're going to talk about cultural diffusion later on, which is the most important word you'll ever learn. So, anyway, and thank you for school, Mesopotamia, because these scribes got to go somewhere to learn how to what? To learn how to write, okay? So, Mesopotamian education was so intense. Like, I don't even think you understand how intense it was. Sumerian writing was so complicated that scribes had to study for years how to actually write this stuff. Because if it's a series of triangles and you're trying to transport complex ideas in a series of triangles, that means that there are thousands of combinations that these triangles can be set up in, right? So the writing system is actually really complicated. It's not like phonetic writing where it's like, C and A and T go together to say cat, which is that furry thing over there, right? So it's very, very different. Now, a scribe is a person who copies documents before printing, right? Well, they didn't really print, but you understand what I'm saying. Now, students were wealthy, male, and the training was extremely strict, right? I know this is biased, and I'm not a fan of it either, but it's just very true, okay? So this is actually really kind of cool. Scribes were actually caned if they didn't write fast enough or do it correctly. So we don't do this anymore in school, but they were punished if they ever had mistakes in their tablets. They would actually be hit with a stick by their instructors so they wouldn't mess up again. That's right. So anyway, now, did they learn other subjects? Scribe schools did teach other subjects. They taught math, botany, which is plants, linguistics, literature, all that fun stuff, right? Now, there we go. These schools set a standard for all of the city-states and even our education systems today for a well-rounded student, okay? So the earliest schools on the planet believe that you should have a well-rounded education encompassing several different subjects. So don't be like, whoa, why do I need to know this stuff? Because it makes you a better and more informed person, right? It's one of the reasons why we study history. It's so we can study change over time, so we can understand why societies exist the way that they do today, and then also is to make you a more informed citizen, right? So, now, we're going to get to this part right here, and then we're going to stop here for today, and then we're going to continue in class tomorrow. But, Gilgamesh, one of the coolest stories around. It's actually the very first story and work of great literature. It's an epic poem written completely in cuneiform, and it mentions a great flood and the prince Gilgamesh, who is the hero of the story, going off to try and seek out the herb of life. We'll talk about what the herb of life is tomorrow some more. But the Gilgamesh actually parallels the Nippur tablet, which is a 6-column tablet telling the story of the creation of humans and animals and cities and their rulers of the Great Flood, right? So the irony is that Mesopotamians were constantly fearful of floodwaters because they were well known for destroying cities, all right, and also destroying crops, even though the silt was necessary for their farming, right? So we're going to stop here for the evening, and then we're going to pick back up tomorrow from this point, okay? I hope y'all are enjoying learning about this stuff so far. I will see y'all later on. Have a great day.